uh, I'm not somebody who wants to. I'm not here on this platform as a very a person who has spent any length of time in Sri Lanka, or I don't have a very. I don't want to parade myself as some kind of an expert on it, because I know that all of you know much more about it than I do. However, I think that what happened in the war there cannot be called anything short of a genocide. And perhaps as horrific as what happened there has been the silence that has followed it. And today, we know that those tens of thousands of lives were traded in for strategic interest in the international economic and military trading that goes on. We know that the Chinese ports and the Pakistani and the Indian government's projects that are happening in Sri Lanka have been paid for with the lives of Tamil people. And today it's become a great holiday destination, a great honeymoon destination, a great beach resort destination, and of course the safety of the island is being marketed. It's become a destination for writers at literary festival, at the Gaul Literary Festival. And I was there actually a few months ago, and it really horrified me to see how everything had closed over that war. The roads were smooth, there were no speed breakers, the hotels, the economy was booming, and there was such a deep silence around what has happened. And that genocide has been allowed to happen by the world, while, as we know, there are, the West finds moral reasons to attack other countries which it needs to attack for strategic reasons. And so why are some war crimes acceptable and why are others not? We're not children anymore. We know the reasons for that. But I think if you look at what is happening in the subcontinent today, Sri Lanka becomes very, very important, because other governments, the Indian government, the Pakistani government, and other governments in that area are looking at what the Sri Lankan government did and thinking, if not saying, if they can do that, why can't we? Now it's very easy to portray those of us who have spoken out against that genocide as people who support terrorism or who are actually activists of the LTTE. I think that's an easy equation and a strategic argument that is made against people such as myself. Of course, that is not the case. And while I'm very clear that people do have the right to resort to arms to resist an onslaught against themselves, how that is to be done and what are the values of those groups that do pick up arms is a huge subject for debate. And I do believe that when somebody does do that, it also is responsible for what happened to the people. So I know that in Sri Lanka, many Tamils question what happened and how could that confrontation have resulted in what happened to the Tamil people today. And it's a question that is there for all of us to think about. and talk about, because similar sorts of patterns of annihilation are being thought up and cooked up in India too. You can see that the world is not a moral place. We know that the world is not a moral place, and we know now that what people say and what people do. There's a whole universe. There's a whole universe of fractured morality in that. But the point is, what is going to happen? What is going to happen in that part of the world today? The Indian Army is being deployed against the poorest people of the country, the Adivasi people. Today, as we speak, platoons and platoons of policemen are displacing people in Orissa. And at the back of everybody's mind are the graves of the Tamils of Sri Lanka. So what is the right way of resisting this kind of an onslaught? An onslaught which is backed by imperial power, which is backed by international finance, which is backed by weapons dealers. Recently I read a book that was written by two people who used to work with Israel's Mossad. And there's a description of how in Israel they trained the Sri Lankan army and the LTTE in the same premises. They just had to schedule them so that they didn't bump into each other. They are selling weapons to both sides, to India and to Pakistan. The Chinese are building the Habantota port. We all know that. So how do people who are on the wrong side of this power resist that? Other than mourning for the dead, there are very serious questions we need to ask ourselves about the role of resistance, the role of armed struggle, the space for non-violent resistance. I am somebody who believes in the diversity of resistance. So the constructive thing is to ask ourselves what went wrong, and to not allow that to happen again. And that's more or less what I wanted to say, because I think among the most horrible things I've ever seen and testimonies I've ever read have come from the war. Have come from the war in Sri Lanka. We know that they moved people into hospitals and bombed the hospitals. We know that they moved people asked people to move into no-fire zones and kill them. We know that they targeted people who they knew were not active LTTE fighters. And we know that the world just allowed it to happen, and it will continue to allow it to happen. So, there's no point in us spending all our energies looking for condemnation or sympathy, because even if you get it, it'll just be lip service. The point is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Because the process of annihilation is not just going to be limited to what happened in Sri Lanka. I've been to Tamil Nadu, where Tamil politicians, mainstream Tamil politicians, have made their political careers on talking about the Sri Lankan Tamils. But I have visited the camps of the Sri Lankan refugees in Tamil Nadu, and they are treated like animals. They are treated like prisoners. There are people who've grown up and been born in those camps. They can't come and go without registering themselves. They can't get jobs. So that concern of the Tamil politician, mainstream politician, is rubbish. It's just a way of whipping up, a hollow identity and nationalism, and then cashing it in, like many of these people do. If they had any real concern, that concern would have addressed the people who are in those camps in Tamil Nadu. I've visited those camps, and it's a terrible sight to see. We know that the Indian Army trained the LTTE and then turned against it, for all its talk of terrorism and so on. We know that happened. So I don't think we need to go searching for morality here, but we do need to search for answers to how do you resist this onslaught. Because the onslaught comes in Kashmir, in Manipur, in Nagaland on issues of identity like it did in Sri Lanka, and in other places on issues of caste, on issues of corporate, the corporate eye on natural resources. But whatever it is, eventually there's a kind of legitimization of annihilation in that region, which the Sri Lankan war has given governments in that area.
Okay, thank you very much.